Hi everyone, it is Tuesday afternoon and I am doing this week's Pam Chat. I've been away for a little bit. It's been some crazy times for me. I'm going to bring you up to date with all of that. I'm going to talk about all of the news and what's been happening, and also get you guys fired up because we really got to stay the course here. First of all, I want to talk about all that was going on last couple weeks. As just to give a summary, my friend April Freeman passed away unexpectedly. She was the nominee in CD17. I put my hat in the ring to sort of stand in for her. Myself and our David Walker did that. There was an obscure Florida state statute that came into play, and that statute prohibits anybody who ran in a primary for that cycle anywhere in the country, really, anywhere in the world, from being considered as a step-in nominee, which just means that if a party has the bad luck of their candidate dying, they're going to be stuck with the least prepared persons to step in and fill that role, because it eliminates from contention everybody that's had an up-and-running campaign. So because that law was stupid and facially unconstitutional, I took it to court, and on extremely short notice, literally a few hours between when I found out and I ended up asking for the temporary restraining order. On that Friday afternoon, we got that temporary restraining order, but it was 5:30 p.m. before we even knew what was happening. I then had to come home, see if I could find some legal counsel, which, by the way, I could not. I mean, I am a lawyer, but I am not a Florida lawyer. And in the sense that I'm not barred here, I was allowed to practice here in Florida in-house, which I did, and I did lawfully. And I think I did to great effect. But this was not my area of expertise. And so I spent time looking for a lawyer. I spent time trying to draft some kind of pleading to try to make the case. Had to drive back to Tampa to make the court case, which was at noon on Monday. And on Monday, we had a whole gallery of people standing with us from CD17. That's David and I. But you know, in the fullness of that sort of eventualities, the judge just was unwilling to overturn Florida law on such a thin record, which we were never really given an opportunity to develop the record. The Florida Democratic Party's attorney did show up, but the party's attitude was neutrality, like we don't care, whatever the state chooses to do, we'll do, which I know would not have been the party's position had this been in a district that they were very serious about. I think what the party demonstrated in that situation was that they were not all that serious about CD17. And that's my take on it. Now, people may agree, they may disagree. I'm not here to throw anybody under the bus, but quite frankly, taking a neutral position on this particular issue made no damn sense. It could have easily taken a position, and what I was told is, well, we needed the executive board of the FDP to agree to take a position on that. Well, hey, if you could choose a nominee by conference call, I don't see why you can't get a decision from your executive board by conference call. You know, you could if you really wanted to, and I'm just hard part on that position. You can do what you really want to do when it's important to you. I think that's a fact. So I know that CD17 now has a candidate. I wish their candidate nothing but the best. You know, and I wish CD17 nothing but the best. They are energized, passionate Democrats out there. And sometimes it's a harder lift to be in a Democrat surrounded by such ardent Republicans, but their votes are there. And we just need to get to people and inspire them and give them something to believe in. And so, I did the best that I could, given the very, very limited time and resources that I had. And it's not the first time I fought an uphill battle. You guys know me now. Uphill battle seems to be my middle name. But that doesn't mean you give up the fight, because you know you're not going to win if you don't fight. You know, if you fight, you might win, and you might not. There's never any guarantee that you will, but I'd rather go down swinging. That is my motto. I would much rather go down swinging. I'd much rather not go down at all, for sure, but if I don't attempt, then I have no shot at winning. There's no way to prevail if you don't try. And I think that's a lesson that I want everybody to keep in mind, especially given how difficult and challenging a week this was. You guys saw my Facebook lives about Kavanaugh being done. And I got on these Pam Chats and said, look, the pressure is going to be so hard on the GOP. And it was. You know, the protest would be so strong. And it was. I told you that the evidence against Kavanaugh was going to get worse, and it did. The one part that we just can't seem to get our head around is what it means to have people in positions of power who just don't give a damn about anybody who is not their constituency. You know, it's the most frustrating thing from on the behalf of the folks like us who are activists and protesters, because we want to believe that our protests and our activism changes the minds of the people we put in office, that they will respond to our outcry. That's why we cry out, so that they listen. But they can also take a posture of nothing you say is going to change our mind. And when they do take a posture like that, which is exactly what happened here on Kavanaugh, they took a posture like nothing you say is going to change our mind. Then that's when it becomes all the more abundantly clear that those people cannot be in office to represent us. That's when it becomes overly abundantly clear. Now, I know something about what it means to create an argument, to create a position. I've been doing it for months. And the thing about people who are trained and clever is that they can always, and I mean always, string together good words to justify doing the wrong thing. I mean, it doesn't take much to do that. I do that. I know how to string together words to make an argument. Anybody can do that. The question is, what is your motivation? What are you trying to get accomplished? In this situation, there was absolutely no question. Their goal was to get Kavanaugh onto the Supreme Court, no matter what. Now, given how hard parked they were on that position, I suppose we should have come to peace with the notion a while ago that nothing that we said, did, or came out about Kavanaugh would change our opinion. Like, if it came out that Kavanaugh cheated on his taxes, they would not care. If it came out that he embezzled, they would not care. If it came out that he lied under oath, which, by the way, it did, they would not care. At that point, they would just find words in the English language, string them together, and basically say, we don't care, which is exactly what they were saying. That's what Susan Collins was saying. I don't care. I don't care that the investigation was illegitimate. I don't care that there was so much corroboration around the stories around what was happening, that there was so little evidence that Dr. Blasey Ford was lying or exaggerating. There was literally no evidence of that. But they were like, oh, well, there's no corroboration of what she said. But what they won't say is, yeah, and we intentionally shut down the capacity to find that corroboration. You will never find evidence if you're not actually looking for it. It's a funny thing in the law. If you're not looking for evidence, you won't find it. It's wild. Anyway, the bottom line is we know so much more about Susan Collins and Jeff Flake and Lisa Murkowski than we knew before. I mean, obviously we know a whole lot more about Joe Manchin too, but I will leave that for the moment. The idea is basically this. We know these people. And I suppose in the maturation of time, none of us ought to be surprised by what they do. They will absolutely do what's in the best interest of the GOP. Now, my calculation is that it was not in the best interest of the GOP to seat this person over the massive, vociferous objection of the majority of Americans. My calculation was that this would be so detrimental to their electoral prospects that they would never do it, and they would not want this on primetime news in the midst of their campaigning, because this would be just so difficult to explain away. And you know what? They took a totally different tack. They were like, screw it. Bullying is us. Hurting women is us. So why don't we just take it to the nth degree? Since we've already started down that path, why don't we go down that path on steroids? And the people who agree with us will agree with us on steroids. Okay. I guess it's just a new political way of political calculation, right? It's just a new way to say, hey, I'm going to take the worst position and push it as hard as I possibly can. And maybe by just vociferously pushing this horrible position, I'll convince people that it's not a horrible position. I suppose only time will tell if that tactic is successful, And there's been such a realignment of people in this current era. You can't say for sure that it won't be successful, right? You can't say for sure. Their stonewalling of Merrick Garland worked, right? Because they are 10 times more ruthless than we expect and 20 times more ruthless than we're capable of countering. That's what's being demonstrated on a daily basis. What's being demonstrated on a daily basis is that the GOP is 10 times more ruthless than we expect and 20 times more ruthless than we can counter. Because we're not prepared to do the absolutely out-of-the-box ruthless stuff. We're not hardwired to do that. We believe in the rules in the game. We want to play. We want to win the game, but we still want to be in the game. And we expect them to be in the game. The difference between Democrats and Republicans right now is that Democrats are still thinking that there's a game to win, and Republicans have decided that they don't want us on the field. That's the difference. The difference is that everything that we thought about legislating in the public interest has now gone completely out the door. These people are not legislating in the public interest and have stopped doing so for a while. They're not legislating in the public interest. They're legislating in the interest of their party to the detriment of the public. And that's a new reality that is very difficult to absorb. I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, why has it been so hard to breathe these last few months? Why has it been hard to sleep? Why have I have this low-level dread and anxiety that I cannot process or get rid of? I can't turn away from it. Why am I so scared all the time? Why am I so terrified? Why is this qualitatively different than I've seen in politics to date? And the answer is because we're not dealing with a loyal opposition anymore. We're not dealing with a party that's looking to legislate, in a way that maybe they get a little more, maybe we get a little less, whatever. It's not that. If they could legislate us out of being able to vote altogether, they will. I think we have to accept that, right? They are banking on the gerrymandering that they've already done to be the buffer to this wave, that the blue wave that we're building and we're seeing all over the country is going to be stymied by local and state gerrymandering. That we're not going to win those seats if we only win by turnout by 2 or 3 points, and we still lose. We need a margin of 8 to 10 points to get back control. 8 to 10 points. That's ridiculous. But that's kind of the baked in game that they've done. And they've done this on the down low, not hidden, but not in a way that we were paying attention to, because we were too busy paying attention to trying to move the country forward, right? We weren't seeing the what's the word I'm looking for? We weren't seeing the slow, incremental, surreptitious pulling away and reshaping of the battlefield altogether. We're not playing on the battlefield we're used to. We're in a completely different arena, and we didn't even know. We didn't even know. And now we're waking up to this reality. And it's like, holy smokes. How do I exist in a society where half the people that I run into or more, I doubt that they want me to exist? I doubt their goodwill toward me. That's what's so creating that visceral dread. That's what it is for me. It's this sense that we're not in this together anymore. People genuinely want to see me harmed. They genuinely do. They want to see me powerless. They want to see me voiceless. They want to see me not in the game. They want to see me not at the table. They want to see me suppressed. And it's a very painful thing. It's a very, very painful thing to come to that understanding about a good half or quarter of our population, that they truly don't want that for us. Because the thing is, and I will say this on a stack of Bibles, it is my genuine desire to see all Americans do well. That is my genuine desire. There really has never been in my past, in my work, and the things that I've chosen to do, a desire to see other Americans do badly. Never have I been hardwired that way. And the people that I talk to and I interact with, they're not hardwired that way either. We're not hardwired to want to see ill of our fellow Americans. We're just not. But I've come to understand that for some people, equality feels like loss because they've always felt superior. I'm going to repeat that. For some people, the creation of equality feels like loss because they're so accustomed to superiority. And that's what's so shocking about our times, is that the small steps that we have made, those advances that we have achieved to get closer to equality, are now being shoved back down our throats. Because to the people who have now had to share a little bit, it feels like they're losing everything, because they've never been in a situation where they've had nothing. And that's the incongruity of our time. That's the asymmetry of our times. And you have to, you got to take deep breaths to process this. You have to take deep breaths, and you have to figure out, how do you manage this? How do you manage this new reality? And I'm not claiming I have all the answers. I don't. I can tell you, though, that it is in that context that we have to make a choice. I mean, that's really all we have available to us, is a choice. Do I succumb, or do I fight? Do I succumb, or do I fight? That's a choice that you're being faced with. Now, I want to give you some context. I don't know if you know a whole lot about the history of Florida, but every time that there was an advance for people of color in Florida, there was a massive backlash. And I don't mean kind of backlash. I don't mean like vote for Brett Kavanaugh backlash. I mean Jim Crow backlash. I mean burning down entire villages backlash. I mean lynching people backlash, right? Like every time that there was any incremental growth and opportunity for people of color here in Florida, they came down on them like hellhounds, right? And it was on the Seminole Indians, it was on the Miccosukee, it was on African Americans, it was on everybody. Every time there was ever any kind of growth, any kind of opportunity that came back, it always did. And so for every chapter of history where the disadvantaged got a little bit further, you couldn't expect that the people in power would push back. Because power concedes nothing without a fight. Power concedes nothing without a fight. So my question, actually your question to yourself has to be, what do I do with this? Do I succumb, or do I fight? And the thing is, we need constant data to assure us that our fight will be successful. We read polls, right? We're trying to read tea leaves. We're looking at crowds. We're looking at all these things that are going to help us feel like our effort is going to be worthwhile, that we have a real shot at this. It's a morale booster. Nobody wants to fight in a losing fight. No one, right? So leaders, true leaders, are always telling the troops, hey, we got this. We can do this. We must stay the course. In the olden days, troops would be in a losing battle, and the only reason they stayed in that losing battle was because desertion was dealt with by assassination. So they kept fighting because that's the only thing they could do. But we're not in that situation anymore. It's truly a choice for us to keep fighting for the country we love or not. Right? And the question is, why would you feel like you need a guarantee of a win to keep fighting? Because nobody's ever given a guarantee of a win. No one. Ever. But I can assure you this. If you retrench and retreat, if you give up and you quit fighting, we know exactly who's going to win. Because the other side ain't never going to do that. Right? They're never going to do that. So, where are we? Are we back on the uphill battle, the difficult fight, the no guarantee of win, the oh my gosh, we just don't know if we can do this. Do we have the votes? I'm tired, right? I'm tired of having to struggle. Believe me, I feel that sensation tenfold, right? Tired and exhausted, completely through with the notion that we'd have to go to such extremes to convince people to vote. It's ridiculous. Everybody should feel compelled to vote and compelled to get involved as much as we do. That's what I think. That's what so many people think. And yet we run across people who don't feel compelled, don't feel moved, don't care, check out. And we're like screaming at them to get involved, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting to have to convince people to register to vote. It's exhausting to convince people that they should vote for health coverage and education and things that make their lives okay. We care more about their lives than they seem to care themselves. And that's exhausting. It is. And I get exhausted too. I get exhausted with always having the difficult fight, always having the uphill battle, never getting a level playing field, never getting a chance to show my best self. I get exhausted with it too. And so I am confronted with the same question that you are confronted with. Do I quit or do I keep fighting? And so I take a few days to recoup. I took a few days off of Twitter. I needed to because it was just fueling my rage. So I needed to just kind of pump the brakes on Twitter for a while. I took a break from social media for a while. I focused on pouring my energies into a positive thing for Andrew Gillum on Sunday, which went amazingly well. The energy of the crowd that came out to see him, it reinvigorated me. And it was amazing. I mean, we got somewhere in the vicinity of 2,000 people out in Martin County. I mean, it's really amazing. I've taken, in my self-care, I've taken to YouTube, right? I watch videos of singers and dancers, and because it helps to be a balm to my soul. Like, it helps to cleanse my mind of the rage and the fear and the abject fear that I have of the direction in which my country is going, a direction that would move me backwards, closer to the indignities, closer to the injustices of my grandmother than further away. And so I'm terrified of that. And I need to do some self-maintenance to be able to keep in this fight. But I want to make 100% clear to all of you out there, there is zero chance that I quit fighting. I may take a break. I may take a little time to process my disappointment, but I don't ever quit fighting. I can't. Because the people who came behind me didn't quit fighting for the rights that I have right now. And believe me, they faced as vociferous an opposition as we do, if not more so. A more powerful, a more ubiquitous opposition than we do. And if they could stay in the fight for what we have now, then we must stay in the fight for what our children and our grandchildren will have in the future. That's all there is to it. And we've got to show the pluck and the resolve and the clarity of purpose that our ancestors, our grandparents, our great-grandparents showed in the challenges that they faced. Because I keep asking, what's the alternative? What's the alternative? I know so many people had such a tough time with what happened last week because we watched somebody perjure himself on national TV and then still be rewarded with a Supreme Court seat. We watched somebody disrespect a United States senator on TV and still get a Supreme Court seat. We watched someone who felt it appropriate to dismiss something that he could have done, swear up and down he didn't do it, when the evidence was overwhelming that his word about what he did when he was drunk wasn't worth the utterance. I tell you, I will never respect Brett Kavanaugh, period, ever. He's never a legitimate Supreme Court justice to me. I don't care what he writes or how he writes or when he writes it. He will never be a legitimate Supreme Court justice to me. But it didn't have to be that way. And it's not because he's a conservative. It's because a true person of character would have said, look, I don't know what I did when I was drunk. because I was irresponsible and entitled back then, and I am not that now. But if I did hurt someone, I express here and now genuine remorse and contrition. Had he done that, I think I could have at some point come to peace with it, but it was not that. It was not that. He's not a Catholic, because Catholics are trained to act in contrition of their trespasses on people. That's a Christian way to say, hey, if I hurt you, I'm sorry. Brett Kavanaugh's not sorry. He's still living in complete denial about the frat boy jackass that he was and probably still is. But he's part of our Supreme Court now. And we're going to have to figure out how to navigate that world, a world with a court that is no longer a neutral arbiter of the law, but is a partisan machine to advance Republican desires. We're going to have to figure that out. And the way our ancestors dealt with a system overwhelmingly against them was to train their children and their grandchildren to be cognizant of that and to fight. And that's what we're going to have to do. The bad news is that the machine has been loaded up with bullets. The good news is that they did so in a context where the overwhelming majority of young people are deeply offended by what they did. And those young people, I sure hope they vote this time, and they may not, but eventually they will. And the lessons that they learned in this cycle are going to be staying with them for the rest of their lives. Mothers are making babies right now, and they're going to raise them to remember this. Great-grandparents are going to teach their great-grandkids to remember this, because that's what they were willing to do, to hurt us. That's what they were willing to do. So we're gonna have to regroup, people. It's that simple. We have to regroup. We have to get our act together. And I'm back in the fight. Now, what am I able to do? I'm able to do these chats. I'm able to knock doors. I'm able to make calls. I'm able to give speeches. If I have to go to everybody I know and make sure they vote, I'm able to do that. I'm gonna do that. That may be all I'm able to do. But wouldn't I be better off saying that I did it? Because we don't know what outcome we're going to get November 7th. We don't know. But what we don't want to do is get to November 7th and wish we had done more. That we don't want. So let's get back in it now. We dedicate ourselves to work harder, to make more calls and knock more doors and convince more people. It is a very sad statement in our society that you do have to knock someone's door to get them to vote. That's a sad statement on our society, but it's still a reality we have to deal with. So let's just do it. Let's just do it. If we have tough neighborhoods to knock them anyway. Right? If there are difficult phone calls to be made, make them anyway. Because that is what this whole experiment called democracy is about. It is something worth fighting for. And even though one party knows that they cannot be in complete control and a true representative democracy, and therefore they're no longer interested in a true representative democracy, we have to show that party that they will not win. They won't. We won't accept it. We've come too far. And we do that by doing this, the little stuff, the little efforts, the constant work, the constant insertion of ourselves in the process. That's how we do it. That's the only thing available to us. So let's do it with everything we've got. That's what we are called to do. Because just because you're not going to necessarily win, you don't know if you're going to win, you're not sure if you're going to win, doesn't mean you stop fighting. Because if you stop fighting, I guarantee you, you will lose. Fair enough? Now, I'm going to finish this Pam chat with a little bit of housekeeping. Those of you who love to watch my Pam chats live, great. I love that. I love the feedback. It's important that I see you guys out there because I'm talking directly to you when I'm doing these Pam chats. But it would be massively positive for me if you also subscribed to my YouTube channel. Now, you guys know I don't usually talk about YouTube. I talk about Twitter and I talk about Facebook, blah, blah, blah. But I do have a YouTube channel. It's called Pam Keith Chats on Politics. Now, there is a Pam Keith Chats. Don't go to that one. Go to Pam Keith Chats on Politics. I'm going to be, over the next few days, working to load up all of these different Pam Chats onto that YouTube page. If you subscribe, that's awesome. That's really beneficial for me. And not only that, but stay tuned because I'm working to create a podcast out of these Pam Chats as well. That's an opportunity to expand the audience who hears what I have to say and gives me an opportunity to get into sectors that maybe I'm not exposed to. But if you do like what I do, if you do like what I stand for, then you can do me a great service by going to Pam Keith Chats on Politics on YouTube and subscribing to my channel. That's enough for this week. God bless you all. Do some self-care. Take care of yourself. But know that there's truly nothing more important than staying in the fight. I love you guys. I respect you. I admire you. And I'll see you next week.